The Senate elections are just as important as the presidential elections. Today, we are going to review with you the shocking results of the latest polls in a short and concise way. By the end of this video, you will understand everything very clearly. Let's get started. The political landscape is shifting, and we'll explain why Republicans seem to have a fundamental edge this time around. Out of the 34 Senate seats up for grabs, 23 are held by Democrats, while just 11 are Republican. That's a steep hill for Democrats to climb. Moreover, 8 of those Democratic seats are in highly competitive states, making this election cycle especially intense. Let's start on the West Coast and work our way eastward. Our first stop is Hawaii, a state that has been reliably Democratic for decades. Incumbent Mazie Hirono is seeking her third term, and there's very little reason to expect any surprises here. Polls are scarce because this race isn't competitive, but based on Hawaii's voting history, we can comfortably call it a safe Democrat state. Next up, we move to Washington, where Maria Cantwell is running for her 5th term. The most recent poll from Public Policy Polling shows her leading her Republican challenger, Raul Garcia, by a massive 23 points. This overwhelming lead signals another safe Democrat state. California is another big player in national politics, and it hasn't elected a Republican to the Senate since the 1980s. This year, Adam Schiff is expected to win the seat, leading former LA Dodgers player Steve Garvey by a commanding 31 points in the latest poll from the Public Policy Institute of California. It's safe to say California is solid blue once again. In Nevada, things get a bit more competitive. Incumbent Jackie Rosen is fighting for a second term after narrowly defeating Republican Dean Heller in 2018. According to a recent poll from Ruffo and Welton Strategies, Rosen is leading Sam Brown, a military veteran, by a slim 5 points. While Brown has been gaining momentum for now, Nevada leans Democratic. Moving north, we hit one of the most intriguing races of this cycle in Montana. Despite being a state that voted heavily for Trump in 2020, Democratic Senator John Tester is vying for a 4th term. However, his opponent, Tim Sheehy, a Navy SEAL turned businessman, has a 5-point lead in the latest polls, making Montana lean Republican. Wyoming is about as red as it gets. Incumbent John Barrasso is up for re-election, and although there aren't any new polls, the state's history makes it an easy call as solid Republican. In Utah, Mitt Romney is stepping down, and his likely successor, Republican John Curtis, is poised to take his place. Utah hasn't sent a Democrat to the Senate since 1977, so we can comfortably mark Utah as another safe Republican state. Arizona is a battleground state to watch. With Kyrsten Sinema out of the race after switching from Democrat to Independent, it's now a head-to-head battle between Democrat Ruben Gallego and Republican Kari Lake. The most recent poll from Emerson College gives Gallego a slight 4-point lead, making Arizona lean toward the Democrats for now. In New Mexico, incumbent Martin Heinrich is seeking his 3rd term. The latest poll gives him just a 4-point lead over Republican challenger Nella Domenici, making this race closer than expected. For now, we can place New Mexico in the leaning Democrat column. Down in Texas, we find Senator Ted Cruz running for a 3rd term. While his 2018 race was incredibly close, this time around, he holds an 8-point lead over Democrat Colin Allred in the most recent polls. Texas is shifting more to the right, making it likely Republican this cycle. Both Mississippi and Tennessee are reliably Republican. In Mississippi, Roger Wicker is running for his 3rd term, while in Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn seeks her 2nd. Polling shows Blackburn leading by 21 points, and based on their political history, we can safely call both of these solid Republican states. Next, we head to Florida, where Republican Rick Scott is running for re-election. The Sunshine State has been trending Republican in recent years, and the latest poll from the University of North Florida gives Scott a 4-point lead. While close, this is enough to place Florida in the leaning Republican category. In Virginia, 2-term incumbent Tim Kaine is running for re-election. Kaine has been polling comfortably ahead of his Republican challenger, Hung Sao, with a 10-point lead. This puts Virginia in the likely Democrat column. West Virginia is expected to flip red this year as incumbent Democrat Joe Manchin has announced he won't seek re-election. Polls show Republican Jim Justice with a commanding 33-point lead, making this a safe Republican state. In North Dakota, Republican incumbent Kevin Cramer is looking for a second term, and the latest poll shows him ahead by 37 points. This makes North Dakota another safe Republican state. Nebraska has 2 Senate races this cycle, and both are expected to go to the Republicans. Incumbent Deb Fischer leads her Democratic opponent by 26 points in the polls, ensuring that both seats will remain safely in Republican hands. Missouri Senator Josh Hawley is seeking re-election, and while the state usually leans heavily Republican, the latest poll shows him leading by 9 points. That's enough to make Missouri a likely Republican state. In Minnesota, Democrat Amy Klobuchar is running for her 4th term and leads by over 20 points in the polls. This makes Minnesota a solid Democrat state. In Wisconsin, Democrat Tammy Baldwin is seeking re-election. The most recent poll shows her with an 11-point lead over her Republican challenger, making Wisconsin likely Democrat. Michigan is another competitive state, with Democrat Alyssa Slotkin running to replace the retiring Debbie Stabenow. Slotkin leads Republican Mike Rogers by 5 points in recent polls, putting Michigan in the leaning Democrat column. In Indiana, Republican Jim Banks is expected to easily win the seat vacated by Mike Braun, who is running for governor. Banks has a 10-point lead, making Indiana likely Republican. Ohio presents a unique situation. Democrat Sherrod Brown is running in a deeply red state, but he holds a narrow 4-point lead over Republican challenger Bernie Moreno. Despite Ohio's Republican lean, Brown has the edge, making it leaning Democrat. In Pennsylvania, incumbent Democrat Bob Casey Jr. is leading by 5 points over Republican David McCormick. Despite tighter margins this year, Pennsylvania still leans Democrat. Finally, we have a series of traditionally Democratic strongholds. Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut are all expected to remain safely in Democratic hands. In Maine, Angus King continues his run as an independent but caucuses with the Democrats, and he is likely to win with ease. Republicans 51, Democrats 49. As things stand, Republicans are favored to regain control of the Senate, with a projected 51-49 majority. But with several key battlegrounds still in play, anything can happen in the final weeks of the campaign. What do you think? Will Republicans flip some of the competitive blue seats, or will Democrats hold the line in key battlegrounds? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.